With me again to talk more about the economic ties between China and Latin America is Ryan Patel, International Business Executive. So, Ryan, let's talk about President Xi's overall schedule and the importance of the countries that he's visiting.
Yeah, I mean, you can't underestimate Panama and being really. I think what China is really focusing on, and the president is focusing on, is building its flagship and its base in Panama to be able to serve the rest of Latin America. I think it makes a lot of sense for them, and for 18 months of this relationship, and to now what they've done today on creating this multi, hopefully a bilateral agreement for each other countries is pretty amazing.
Now, China is the second biggest user of the canal after the US. So, as we look at Panama's strategic location, especially given China's Belt and Road and its maritime Silk Road aspirations, what sort of opportunities could this bring, not just for Latin America, but also the Caribbean, the region as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, first I have to say Panama. For Panama itself, it's huge, right? And I've built in Panama my past lives, and they've had a lot of construction. With China being able to put enough infrastructure and money in there, creating that ability to serve these larger economies is huge. For one, for Panama, and because of Panama, you've got the Dominican, Colombia. Those places all are interconnected with each other because of the trade. So it creates a stronger hold for if one country is strong, the other three countries in trade will be as equally and provide goods and perspective. So it is a domino effect in that region for sure.
And what about the concerns or challenges being raised in the China Latin America relationship? What stands out to you?
I mean, I'm assuming you're pointing to the U.S.'s concern with China's influence in Latin America. I think for China and Latin America, it's a win-win because there's two needs, and they both are hitting those two needs. I think what you're addressing is China's or U.S.'s perspective of China's growing influence in Latin America, and I think for that it's you have to be competitive. China's offering infrastructure and investments, and these companies, right? Chinese companies coming to Latin America and providing these services, like in Panama, it is a pretty big deal. And for the U.S. companies that are serving Latin America, will have to step up its game and be able to be competitive and have infrastructure to be able to do that.
And even within the region itself, though, in Latin America, how are they receiving Chinese investment?
I think it's a plus, right? I mean, I think it's kind of what China's done with Africa. It's that similar model where where infrastructure, specifically in many of these Latin American countries, is something that they needed. And with China being the largest creditor, China has put themselves in a position to want the country to succeed, because that would then in turn lead to China being successful. And because of that, you've got this kind of win-win scenarios that it doesn't seem like, well, one country is just pushing one other country. They both are both together having to be successful so they can both have a revenue stream at the same time.
So, as we take a step back and look at President Xi's diplomatic tour and his performance at the G20 summit, what did we learn so far about the state of relations between Latin American leaders, the EU, and China?
Well, I think the top of what they've all talked about between those three countries is trade, and I can't remember a time in the last decade how trade has become such a powerful word, powerful message, and that when a country or a country head comes out and talks about that they're supporting free trade or supporting globalization, you have to expect that they're going to have to follow through with this. And I think when you have these, specifically in Latin America, people forget you've got Chile, Brazil. Some like Chile's, for example, GDP has been really strong. You got to see that there's a lot of opportunity, and China is betting that they can reach the benefit behind it too.
And we've certainly seen China become the second largest trading partner of Latin America. So, talk a little bit about China's changing role in the region, especially over the last decade or so.
Yeah, I think from just infrastructure is kind of how they kind of went in, but now you talk about energy and you talk about I think for me what stood out was tourism. Think about how many the population that's in China, and if they can create this kind of bond between Latin America, it provides a tourist hub not just for the Chinese citizens, but for Latin American citizens to be able to make a profit and create more people to come into the region. That is huge. You can't really move people like that in other parts of the country without having that kind of relationship. So there is a multi-benefit, not just in infrastructure spending that China has done, but they've been looking at from retail sales and services and provide kind of the mobility of people and education at the same time.
And outside of the cultural cooperation, you obviously have a lot of oil-producing countries, some of them in trouble as we look at Venezuela in Latin America. How do you see China's role there?
Well, I think that they will probably be one of the few countries that will have, that will probably see an opportunity to potentially help Venezuela, or an ability to provide another resource that is outside of Latin America, to be able to, I don't want to say bail out Venezuela, but Venezuela doesn't really have too many countries in Latin America willing to help at this point based on what they're doing right now.
All right, thank you so much. Ryan Patel there, International Business Executive. Thank you so much.